ISIS. I run Sister Sci-Fi. A little over a year ago, I became the executive director of Aunt Loot Books. If you don't know, Aunt Loot is one of the oldest, largest independent nonprofit feminist press, intersectional feminist press in the country, because most of those type of presses tend to be really, really small. And yeah, so that's me, and we can turn that off, and then I can show you, like, cue you up for the other slides. The
Okay.
next slide is like, what am I reading?
Okay.
What am I
That's
creating?
one thing I was going to ask you too. All right. Sounds good. So, Aunt Loot, you become the executive director last year, and I know I was reading up, and you made some changes pretty quickly. And you mentioned that there are a few. I think between 1990s to now, they went from 100 to 30 or something like that. And how are you feeling about?
The future of Aunt Loot.
Yes.
We gonna be here.
All right.
Unless we're not. No, we're going. Aunt Loot has been around 42 years. Hey, person, if you feel comfortable, sit in the front just so I can somewhat see your face. Aunt Loot has been around 42 years. A lot of that has been by the grit and willpower of the founder, Joan Pinkvoss. But I think what I'm excited about is building more community and resources around Aunt Loot. So hopefully we'll be around another 42 years.
Yeah.
So that's my aspiration. And then, I like to sometimes when I'm like, okay, when I'm nervous about it, I'm like, Aunt Luke can be like the feminist press of the West. And the feminist press is like a 50-year-old nonprofit feminist press
Okay.
based in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going anywhere. So I feel like if they're here, we can still be here and it'll be great.
Right. What are some overlaps or crossovers between Sister Sci-Fi and Aunt Loot, or is it very much separate?
No. Fortunately, I mean, that's how Aunt Luke found me, was through my work at Sister Sci-Fi. So it was a really kismet moment. Like, so last year, both of their titles happened to be speculative fiction books by African American women.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're doing a virtual event, and I guess somebody at Aunt Luke Googled Black women, Afrofuturism. I don't know what they Googled, but Sister Sci-Fi came up. And so I was a panelist on their virtual event. And then they opened the role for ED, and then one of the staffers like emailed me. They're like, "Isis, don't you want to apply?" And initially, my response is no, but obviously,
You actually did say no? 'Cause
no, no,
I
no,
know
no,
your
no, no.
yes
In my
game is
mind, in my
strong.
mind,
Oh,
in my
okay.
mind. Initially, yeah, in my mind, in my mind. I was like, this sounds like more work than sisters. But obviously, I said yes to applying
Yeah.
and met with the board and the outgoing ED. It's the work that they do is so powerful. I guess the work that we're doing now. So, and there is a lot of overlap. So, with the titles that we'll be publishing later this year and early next year, half of them will be speculative fiction, and that's not me pushing my agenda. The staff is excited about speculative
Yeah.
fiction, and it's expanded, like, my knowledge in publishing, because with Sister Sci-Fi, it's like the book is finished and done, right? Which is an exciting place to be. So, like, looking at a book when, like, it's in manuscript, right? There's no cover. I was like, there's no synopsis. We got to create the synopsis. Like, that's what I'll be doing after this panel, like creating listings for some
Yeah.
books coming up next year. So yeah, it's a different part of the journey.
Well, the overlap of speculative fiction and feminist writing, or speculative writing, feminist writing, is I feel like it's a large overlap, because when you're looking toward the future, uh, we all know what needs to happen. Like, kind of, we need to run the world. Almost kidding, but not really. So it makes sense that they gravitated toward you, and with everything that you've done with Sister Sci-Fi. One of the questions I was going to ask is, who should we be reading?
Wow. I mean, I think my like anybody that you want. Um, but who do I recommend, right? Who am I recommending a lot right now? Octavia Butler, but that's not right now. That's like all the time.
Always.
Um, I guess I'd be remiss if I did not recommend an Aunt Lute author. So Michelle Tracy Berger, that's the last book that we published, Doll Seed, which is a collection of short stories. Um, Part of me wants to start a new genre. I consider it feminist fiction. It's feminist futurism. So I'm playing around with seeing if the powers that be will make that a thing. Um, so what else? I mean, I think everybody should be reading N.K. Jemisin. Um,
Without a doubt.
and I'll say this last one. I was so late to the game. I was so late to the game. People were hating on me on social media. But Tiana Reed Dew, everybody should be reading Tiana Reed Dew,
Yeah.
especially if you like horror. So,
I don't even like horror, and I read one of her books years ago, decades, and I was hooked.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably My Soda Key.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yep, that was it. With the
The
vampire
African
dude.
Immortals. Yeah,
Yes.
the African Immortals.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so good. Yeah. So, I mean, I know why you started Sister Sci-Fi, and I know what the goals are, but what was the tipping point, do you feel? Like when you just said, this is bonkers, and so we need to do better.
That question is so beautiful and makes so much sense. But you were here yesterday when I was like, yeah, I just said yes. Yeah, I mean, I think it was, I have a life coach, and she's like, sometimes you just have to take a step and then hope that a path shows up to take the next one. And that was definitely what happened with Sister Sci-Fi. Like, you know, Pamphlet was there. And like, Sister Sci-Fi wasn't the first. Like, before that, I did Sister Cinema. And then I had a break, and then I started Sister Sci-Fi. And it's, you know, I just remember my younger sister saying, oh, this is the most authentic thing you've ever done in your whole life.
Wow.
Little sister and the shady compliments. And I love her. And I was like, yeah, it feels right.
Little
And I
sisters are
mean,
great.
it's hard, but it feels right.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people, what you do is an act of resistance, right? And writing feminist literature is an act of resistance, and Afrofuturism and keeping, everything, creating is an act of resistance right now. And a lot of resources are going away and things like that. So for someone who wanted to do something like a big step, like create this new thing and dedicate itself to something that has been missing, how?
I think writers do that all the time. I think that is the very definition of creativity. So it didn't feel like a magic formula, right? I think as human beings, we take an idea and we find the resources collectively to make that happen. So if it's, launching, like writing a book or launching a new type of retail space or going to the moon, and yes, I'm saying that because Tracy, I see you. Yeah, like we start with like this impossible idea and make that happen, and take our fiction and bring it into the real world. And sometimes that's beautiful and miraculous, and sometimes that's toxic and terrifying. But it's powerful, and it's one of the most beautiful parts of being human.
Does working for Aunt Luke keep you now primarily in San Francisco? Or are you still?
Yeah. The bio that says, I can currently live in Seattle and Oakland. I think I said that because I want my gay husband to invite me to, no. Um, I think I would, like, when I started Sister Sci-Fi, I was living in Seattle, and like, Seattle is the type of city, no matter how crazy or wonky your ideas, there's some group of people somewhere in the city that will be like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm like, so I think I wanted to maintain that tie. And so I didn't want people to like read my bio and be like, oh, she's gone. She's in Oakland now. Like, we can't invite her to anything. I'm like, I'm here. Keep inviting me to stuff. But yeah, I mean, like during the pandemic, I relocated to the Bay Area. I relocated to Oakland, so that's where I am most of the time. So it's not just Outloot is more like life at this point. But I mean, like, I'm in Seattle all the time. Um, in May, I'll be at Langston's Black Nerd Fest.
Okay.
Um,
How would a business, an organization, a museum get a vending machine?
how would you get a vending machine? Um, it's a process. Um, so with the first three, like I knew I was going to launch it, and the big thing was finding a location to say yes. And so the first two in Seattle landed at Mixed Coffee and Black Coffee Northwest, and then Mixed ended up ending the operations, nothing to do with the vending machine. It's just that the owner wanted to do something else, and so that vending machine ended up going to Distant Worlds Coffee because somebody had already told me about Distant Worlds Coffee, sci-fi and fantasy themed coffee shop, lesbian owned. It was a really great fit. And so we moved that vending machine there, like I'd already begun conversations. And then with Black Coffee Northwest, I think I reached out to the Northwest African American Museum, and they were an enthusiastic yes. Um, Other organizations have, or locations have asked, and it just has to be a right fit. So it has to be someplace with strong, good foot traffic, someplace where like the demographic is interested in investing in books. I've changed my thinking of like what makes the ideal location, because at first it's like, it'll be coffee shops and it'll be great. But like usually when you go to a coffee shop, you're like, I'm trying to get a coffee. So what works best now are like kind of like museums, museum libraries. So I would love to have like a sister sci-fi book vending machine at the Schomburg in New York. Airports. So those conversations are really slow, but like I've had some initial conversations with Oakland International Airport, still trying to weasel my way into Seattle. If y'all like sage or burn or pray, keep on that. So like a big airport like SFO would be amazing. But yeah, so it's really like, is it the right fit in terms of the level of traffic and then the type of traffic? Would they be excited to see a sister sci-fi book vending machine? With Norwescon, the fact that the vending machine is here, which is on loan for Distant Worlds Coffee, it will go back to Distant Worlds Coffee. Rob and Peggy were just instrumental in helping with the logistics with that, and I'm really glad that it's here. It's been really exciting to see people's responses to the vending machine being here. And the vending machine, like, thinks it's like its own celebrity. I was like, oh, you got sass. I'm not mad at it. The vending machine was featured in Prose to the People, which Katie Mitchell did a coffee table book about Black-owned bookstores, and she did a spread on the vending machine, and it's written from the point of view of the vending machine. Talk to me for an hour, and it's from the point of view of the vending machine. No, I love it. I love it. So yeah. So
That is funny. One of the things I loved last night in the opening ceremonies was your story about your plant. What is something else that, I mean, there's so much that you've done, and I don't mean that, as just being a weirdo, but you know, Harvard, Stanford, like all the things. But what is something that is ISIS to your core?
what is something that is ISIS to my core? I don't know. I mean, I think there are many different parts of me, and so maybe that's something that's ISIS to my core. I feel like my life is a set of different puzzles. Um, so that's a great question. I don't know. I think like that I'll always be focused on my personal growth and those close to me and like the community at large. That I'll always be an advocate for people being able to live their most authentic lives. I think that's part of my core. Um, I'm a believer of magic and in technology. Like today's magic is tomorrow's technology. Yeah, and I think intentional community. So that was a lot of things. If I had to choose one, I think it's really investing in intentional community and meaningful connections.
Favorite Sunday afternoon? It's the perfect Sunday afternoon for you. Or weekend, or how do you relax? You don't. But no, how do
No, no,
you?
no. I do realize. My sister would agree with you. Like, yeah, she don't ever relax. I relax. I relax, right? Get out of here. I think reading a good book, taking a walk. Um, I love taking long hot baths. That's like that always feels really nice. Um, yeah, I'll stay there. Yeah, but I mean, probably reading a book. I watch a lot of television,
Really?
like a ridiculous amount of television. A lot of television. Like, how did you watch all the television? I was like, oh, I watch a lot of television.
Yeah. What's at the top right now?
What am I watching right now? Oh, season 2 of The Last of Us is
I haven't
out.
started yet, so I'm waiting for my sister. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sisters.
I'm ready.
Season 2 of The Last of Us is really good. I didn't watch the game. I didn't play the game. But I appreciate the fact that like there's an explanation for the zombie pandemic, which in The Walking Dead, I think the showrunners have been like, we're never gonna broach that subject
Right.
because that broaches into science fiction. I'm like, you got a show about zombies. Like that ship sailed, right? So yeah, so enjoying The Last of Us. There's another, there's, I think, Dead City, which is a Walking Dead spinoff, is coming back, so I'm excited about that. I love Watson, which,
Oh, the new
yeah,
Watson with
yeah.
Chris Chestnut. Yeah.
Which brings me to a whole lot, like, a bunch of other crime dramas with, like, a black lead. So Watson, Found, Irrational. So, yeah.
And Watson is filmed in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Oh, yes, because it's set in U-Hop. Yes, yes, yes.
What? I think you have a slide with what you are reading currently.
Yes. If you can put up the slideshow, and that should be slide 2. Okay, so books I'm reading, if there's a typo, which there probably will be, I'm dyslexic, so that's my excuse. So I'm reading A People's Future of the United States. The title may sound familiar because this anthology, it was inspired by A People's History of the United States. So this is a collection of short stories that are speculative fiction. All the authors are part of some type of marginalized identity. It was curated by Victor Laval. And so we're reading that as part of the Sister Sci-Fi book club. So we meet every Wednesday and we discuss a story. The book club has been meeting for like 3 years now. We started off with Dark Matter, then did Africa Risen. We were supposed to read African Myths and Tales, but the club was not excited about that. So we switched to People's Future of the United States. Yeah, and so that's a fun group, and we meet. A Moral Dark is a book that I read like when I read it mostly as audiobooks, so like when I'm doing stuff. And Homegoing is also a book club book, so the West Oakland Public Library started a book club. It's in person, and yeah, so they started off with Parable of the Sower. Last week we discussed Stars and the Blackness Between, and so this is the May book pick. So that is what I'm reading. Are any of these books new to anybody? Yay! Oh, yay! That's
Immortal
exciting.
Dark, yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right.
and then next slide.
Yeah.
We can go to the next slide. And so these are books I'm creating, and it's purposely creating and not writing. So the first 2 books are books that Aunt Lute is publishing. So the font is really small, but it's Caramel and Carmela. So Caramel is a short story by Joel Gomez. Joel Gomez wrote The Gilda Stories. The Gilda Stories is the first novel featuring a black lesbian vampire published in the U.S. Yes, I see somebody excited about that. Still in print. I think it's been in print for 30 years now. The latest edition has a foreword by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Anyway, Joel Gomez is amazing. So, and she wrote Carmel in response to Carmela. So I think Carmela, so vampire story before Dracula, there was Carmela, so very sapphic, which is perfect for us as Aunt Lou Books to publish. So that comes out in October. So really excited about that. The next book is The Divining Season by a Native American author. Within Outlook, we describe it as true detective night country meets beloved. So there's a little bit of mystery. Native American girls are missing. There's a little bit of haunting from ancestors of the past. So we're really excited about that story. And then I am a co-editor of Afrofuturism Short Stories by Flame Tree Press. And when I say co-editor, I will literally go upstairs this afternoon and keep reading stories. They're like, Isis, you still got 35 stories to read. I was like, yes, I know. That will come out in October. Yes, it'll come out in October. These stories will get read. And so that's really exciting because technically it's my first time my name will be on a title page. So yeah, so those are books I'm helping to create, not write, but create.
Great.
And I think that's it. Is there a slide after that? I think that's the last slide, right?
All right.
Yeah.
I always forget, but I'm not forgetting now. Questions from the audience? No?
Oh, yeah, I was like, either it's really clear or really boring. I'm here for either one. Yes.
Oh, we have a hand over here.
What's the deepest source of joy in your life right now?
The deepest source of joy right now is it's really my people, right? So I mentioned my gay husband, my sister, my family visited last week, and the moment they got on the plane, I was crying. I was like, "Oh my God, y'all are gone already!" So yeah, just those meaningful connections and the space to be vulnerable because being vulnerable for a long time was extremely hard. It's still a work in progress, but that's the biggest source of joy. Thank you for asking.
I don't know if this is necessarily something that you want to talk about or related to this, but I love hearing about intentional communities. Would you be willing to share a little more about your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, is there a particular question? Because I can talk about intentional community,
Nope, have at it. Whatever, well, maybe something that you wish people would know enough to ask you about intentional communities and just don't. So your favorite thing you'd want to tell people about.
Yeah, no, that's. I think I really only started saying the word intentional communities fairly recently. I think I had a presentation yesterday, I brought it up. And I think I curated a panel on Black Utopia as part of American Writers Program in LA a couple weeks ago. And then the conversation was what would it be to sit and we may not have the resources to build a Black Utopia from roots to nuts today, but we do have the resources to create a Black Utopia for a moment, for a second, for an hour. We can make this space a Black Utopia. And then, so when I was starting those conversations, what do we need from the audience to create a Black Utopia? And they would say liberation, they would say rest, they would say authenticity, they would say honesty. But nobody said isolation, right? Nobody said, I just need to sit in my room in the closet and close the door. The foundation of any movement is community. And it's not just a bunch of random Facebook contacts, it's a community that's aligned with value, it's aligned with how we're going to do things, it's aligned with how do we define resources, how do we define information, how do we define truth. And everybody has a different intentional community for me, and I think so that's where intentional community is coming from. It's a place where we can be soft, we can be vulnerable, so that we can go out in the world and be strong. I think especially in the age of the internet, we know a lot of people, but we definitely don't have people that it's we're going to do this together with people. And I have a lot of great, everybody who I think of that I aspire to or look up to, they had a really powerful community or they're creating a really powerful community. So I'm excited about that work and those connections. Thank you for
That's awesome.
asking.
Thank you.
I came a little late, so I hope this isn't like a dumb question, but it sounds like you put together a lot of different voices into these books, and I'm wondering how you go out and find all those people and all those stories and all those voices. And apologies again if that's already been asked. Or
No, right. So, yeah, question is totally valid. So I think I'm talking from two different hats. So with Aunt Lutz, we have a very robust submission process. So for the books that I put up, so the Divining Season was submitted on our website, so that was an amazing find. We have I want to say we have a very active and robust acquisitions team. Like, it's a really small team. It's really like two people. They invest a lot of time in it, and I'm very grateful for them. With the Jewel Gomez story, that was more of a process, and it's like, what story do we, because it'll be part of a series on Colloquy where we take a classic book, match it with a contemporary author, and have them in conversation, which is the meaning of the word colloquy, which an Aunt Lute staff member taught me. And so that one came about. I'm like, I describe my work sometimes as a professional fangirl, and I've been fangirling Jewel Gomez for forever, right? And so I was like, oh, if we're gonna do Carmilla, let's ask Jewel, and Jewel said yes. So that was more with a curatorial lens based off of what worked for that. And then for Afrofuturism, that short story collection, we did an open call. Flame Tree has a bunch of different collections kind of like this. So like they do African short stories. They did Black sci-fi short stories. They, and like not just Black, like they have Viking tales of horror, right? So they did an open call, like I did a call on like Sister Sci-Fi social media and so forth, and so that's how we got a lot of submissions. Some submissions are absolutely brilliant, and it's like the authors are like been published in a bunch of publications, and some submissions I was like, this is so fascinating.
And
So
you
yeah.
said that was through Aunt Lute?
No, Afrofuturism short stories is through Flame Tree Press, so separate from Aunt Lute.
Nice.
Thank you for being here. One of the books that you said that you're currently reading, I forget the full title, but it was about people's future, so the people's history of the United States. So it inspired this question: what, in your mind right now, would be a future that you love to live into?
Thank you. Thank you, Pamphlet. Um, oh my God. So last week, Friday, I asked a similar question. It was like, because it was Alexis Pauline Gomes and Malika Parker. And I'm like, so as Black feminists, like what tenets do you want to take into the future? And their answers are what's inspiring this. So if you watch the YouTube video of that and you're like, oh, Isis totally riffed that, I am. I'm giving credit. And both of them were like a future grounded in like love, like everything, the work, the movement, the joy, it has to start from a place of love because that's the glue for the community and so forth. So for me, that is key, right? And so it's not just like, and so is like not in office anymore. It's like, how do we replace that like the toxicity of that administration with love, with acceptance, with authenticity, with like a place where we can all be. So that's the future that I'm working for. And that's the future that I hope is my legacy for future generations, our legacy for future generations, because I don't think it's work anybody can do by themselves.
Right. And so what do you think needs to happen for it? Well, that's not what I mean. People have a lot of fear right now, and a lot of people a lot of people feel hopeless and yet are still trying to work and be creative and find ways to ground themselves in love and to put things into the world, and also are looking into ways to become expats, and to for our people who have like trans children, and for the whole trans community to not be seen as people and everything, and then all of the rights and things that are being taken away. And I felt this coming before with the first regime. And one of the things that a historian friend of mine said to me that was, it was true, you know, it made sense intellectually, was we're a young country and we've only had one civil war. And other countries that are about our age, you know, at about that time, they've had multiple civil wars. So it's not surprising historically that we are at this place, you know, and we avoided it. And do you feel like, and we see this a lot in genre fiction, where there is the big war or destruction or whatever, and then it starts with a dystopian place where then you're building from there. Do you feel like it has to, as somebody who looks toward the future a lot and reads a lot about other people's stories and things like that, and sees the trends that happen, do you feel like we're on that path?
So I'll give you my answer, but I'll preface it. I am delusionally optimistic, right? So if there's any way to see a silver lining, I'm like, oh, yes. It's weird. I'm delusionally optimistic and also very anxious. So my answer is like no, right? I'm in my nature a lover, not a fighter, right? I'm that person, like, if you need somebody to, like, have a gun and kick down the door, that's not me, right? Like, I'm glad somebody does it. I'm glad it's not me, right? And also, like, my parents are from Ghana, and Ghana was one of the first African countries to, like, end colonization, but they did it through, like, legal action. They didn't do it through, like, a war. So because of all those things, I'm of the mindset, like, peaceful transitions of power are very possible, right? With dialogue, with rallying, with movements, with community, right? And I mean, people need to stay safe in the now, but I don't think we're headed towards war. But I'm not a political pundit, so I'm not the expert, and I'm delusionally optimistic. But I think there are a lot of other tools at our disposal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how we're doing on time.
We still
Wow.
about 15 or 16 minutes.
Yes.
So you are this collaborator, you are this protagonist. What is your origin story? What got you in and pulled you
love that.
into this?
I'll give my standard origin story because I was like, how far back do we go? So with Sister Sci-Fi, a friend and I were reading, asked me to read Lilith's Root by Octavia Butler. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And it's brilliant. It's the first story in that trilogy, Dawn is my favorite work by Octavia Butler. And then when we were done reading it, my friend started naming all these other Black science fiction and fantasy writers. So she's like, of course, Nnedi Okorafor and Tomi Adeyemi. And I was like, no. Right? Like, I had to sit there and be like, no. And I was like, and I studied Black and African American literature, like starting from high school, like a lot in college. I was like, how did I not know that there were Black women writing science fiction? And not only Black women, but like me, they're like first generation West African people, right? Like, I was like, I should know, we should all know. And so that was kind of like, I want to do something where we all get the memo, like nobody's missing the memo. And so that was the start of Sister Sci-Fi. So that was like October 2018. And then February 2019, I did like this hybrid event in Oakland with Jewel Gomez. We were talking about the Gilda stories, and Jewel came and she did a bit of reading. It was a really fun event. I don't know how that ended up being a fun event, but so that was the impetus of Sister Sci-Fi.
Yeah. We mentioned N.K. Jemisin. because of how I came to both of them, she and Needy Okorafor are so wound together for me. And she pulls on, like Binti pulls on her African heritage and in just such an amazing way. Um, have you, no, I don't know what my question was. That was more in just me talking about somebody else that I liked. But I did have a question, and it has slipped my mind. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I didn't write it down.
Thank you. Yeah, it might be tied to where you were going too. One of the things that I've loved about this convention in general is just hearing so many people talk about what it is that they love about reading, science fiction and fantasy, and just anything. What are some of the things that you enjoy the most when you're immersed in the kinds of books you like to read?
So I'll answer that in a couple parts. So what do I love about reading? I realize in general, I love being able to get into somebody else's head. Like, in this situation, I think they'll move like this. In this situation, I think they'll move like that. They'll feel like this, right? And in reading, you get to do that, and you don't have to ask like 50 really invasive questions to get there. It's like, oh, I understand why this character is doing that. I understand what their motivation is. And I really enjoy that, being able to get to walk in somebody else's world from their point of view, even if I'm like, I holistically don't understand what they're doing. And Kate Jemison does a brilliant job of getting her readers to understand why her characters are moving the way they do and build that really deep connection. So that's why I enjoy reading in general. I think the second part of your question is like, what excites me about science fiction? People would ask that question, I'd feel so brilliant, like, science fiction is a world where you can feel free and liberated and you can test all the rules and none of the rules are limiting. And I was like, oh, I'm so unique. And then I listened to an interview by Octavia Butler and I was like, oh, I'm probably just parroting her. But it felt cool when I was saying it in the beginning. And now I'm like, oh, I like science fiction for the same reason Octavia Butler enjoyed science fiction. I think it's particularly important for people from marginalized communities. So I'm Black and I'm queer, and I'm the child of first-generation immigrants, and I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic. So it allows me to science fiction allows me to move in very different ways. Like, it allows me to imagine at a much broader and bigger scale than like my day-to-day life in society historically has allowed me.
Yeah, I remembered my question. So I know Octavia Butler, has passed a bit ago. But when I first moved here, she was still alive, and I will never forget when I saw the news that she'd slipped and fallen and passed away. But you are from here, or you lived here. Did you ever get to meet her?
Did I ever kick it with Octavia Butler
Yes.
and get tea and coffee? Did she used to send me texts in the morning? No. No, it sounds like a great story. It's like, I should have met Octavia. No, I never met Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler died in 2004. So I don't think I had I think I moved to Seattle in 2007.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we never crossed paths, and then and I didn't really start doing work with Sister Sci-Fi until 2019. Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, what would it be like to meet Octavia Butler? I think I would be, because I'm either super on or very like off, and I think like Octavia Butler would have most likely met me. Octavia Butler would have met me when I was on, and she would have been like, what is this woman on? And I think I would be really intimidated. I don't know what I'd be like. Would you say to Octavia Butler, like,
Right.
oh my God, I really loved your book? It's like, yes, I know, I'm Octavia Butler. She'd be an Octavia Butler, but yes, I know you love me. Like, okay, so end the conversation. So I don't know what I would say. But what is amazing is like the work of Sister Sci-Fi, the work of Aunt Lute has allowed me to be in community with some really amazing authors. So like Nisi Shaw, they have been an amazing mentor. Nisi lives in Seattle and was mentored by Octavia Butler. I took a stab at writing a short story, Andrea Hurston, who also did Clarion West under Octavia Butler, gave me feedback and gave me such rich feedback on the story. I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. I've like taken a picture with Nadia Corfor, so that doesn't quite count. But Nadia Corfor, I mean, this is being recorded, so yes. And then, and I did like, it was a Crowdcast Live with N.K. Jemisin, and N.K. Jemisin is, so like, I feel like somebody like, and I'm never gonna meet N.K. Jemisin, but I feel like N.K. Jemisin like is somebody who I could like have coffee with and not be worried about like putting my foot in my mouth. So I don't know if that's where your question was going, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm offering up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Any audience questions at this point? Okay. Oh,
Super vague question, all right? So, but I mean, I've noticed lately that genre has kind of been cracked through a cultural lens. You think about the movie Prey. It's like, yeah, we've all seen The Predator. We know what it is, and we love it. We like seeing him. But now we're going to see it through this native perspective, and it's awesome. It kicks a lot of ass. And so, like, we're seeing all of these new perspectives on genre, and this is where I get vague. I mean, just what do you think is the special sauce there? I mean, why? Obviously, we love robots and monsters and you know all that stuff and fantasy and science fiction, but just why do you think this renaissance now in seeing these different cultural perspectives on the same stuff?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And it's a question I ask myself a lot. So I think there are a couple things. One, there's a writer that says that the universality of a story is in the Pacific, right? Like writing about like the details of a character's life, right? And especially in genre fiction, I think science fiction and fantasy writers like are most curious about experiences that are not their own, right? So like to read a book where I get to be immersed not only in these fantasy worlds, but in a whole new culture is very exciting for most science fiction and fantasy readers. So I think that's one aspect of it, right? But I also think like the explosion of like more nuanced media from different cultural backgrounds is just like, with streaming media, there's a whole lot more opportunity to consume, right? Like, I grew up where there were 3 television channels, right? So a lot of the characters reflected most of America, right? But now they're like countless streaming apps that are all looking for content, that are all looking for original content. I think there's more opportunity for different voices. I mean, television and movie production is still extremely expensive, but I think that's kind of aided in that, like, there are more platforms, we can consume more, and that gives more opportunity for different voices.
yeah. There was a question up here.
Hi, sorry for being late, but when I walked in, it was Octavia Butler and special interest. Special interest. So, any thoughts on Parable, specifically talents, and the current world we're in?
One, anybody reading Parable of the Sower right now, like such brave people. I was like, y'all are so brave. I personally could not read Parable of the Sower right now for the first time, but it is very prescient. And I think a lot of people describe Octavia Butler as a fortune teller, a purveyor of the future. And I think even in interviews, she has said she doesn't see herself as a fortune teller. She sees herself as like offering a warning. So if we continue on this path, what is a possible future? Right. So much of Parable of the Sower is true, from like the wildfires in LA to an authoritarian American president. Keep America, yeah. So, and there's some stuff that's not as bad, right? So there's drought in California, but it's not quite as bad. We're not buying water as if it's wine quite yet. And I think it harkens awareness about like climate justice, and it's a great example of climate fiction. I think she does a lot of offering lessons on how to be prepared for natural disasters and living more equitably with the earth. I'll go back to Community. her character does a great job in building intentional community. And so in a lot of ways, I read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, which is also a rough ride. Like, I read Parable of the Sower, and I was like, yes, they made it. And I was like, oh, my God. But just two books on, like, how to survive together, right?
I was writing for a comic book blog once and went to Comic-Con. And one of my questions that I was asking people is, what is the representation in your book? Like, do you represent the world as we are in right now? And my son was with me, and he got tired towards the end, and we went to this guy's booth, and he said, let me just break it down. Do you have black people in your book? And the guy, he said, no, why would I? And it was a space novel, and I'm proud to say my head didn't explode, and I know that my son was very glad that my head didn't explode. But I didn't even have words. I didn't even know how to respond to that. But it's kind of like the Friends thing, where like you're in New York City and there are no brown people at all, like because we exist in the world, What have you had people question what you do kind of with that lens, and what is your response? I mean, you are such a lover, not a fighter. I mean, this is so wonderful, so I know my response would be very different from yours. But like, what is the kind and gentle response to that?
Okay, that's great, because I was where I like where your question landed. So for the person who is like, why would I? It brings me back to Octavia Butler shares an experience. So she was on a panel, and then one of the authors were like, the aliens are the black people. And I'm like, and I'm sure Octavia Butler had something snarky to be like, that's shenanigans. For the author, like, why would I? That's a terrifying question, but I think it's like a response like that is kind of like why something like Sister Sci-Fi has to exist. There has been questionings about it, and I'm just like, especially in the beginning, I think people who weren't in our curatorial focus would be like, but I don't understand, like, why is it just, and I'm like, it's okay that you don't understand. That just means that this isn't for you, and that's okay. And then I'll see stuff like that type of response. Somebody on Threads was like, name a black, and I think it was black under Indigenous author. And some of the responses, I was like, were like wild. Like people were like, I can't name anybody. Some people were naming authors that were Southeast Asian. It's like, this is so weird. But that's just work. That just proves that the work needs to be done, right? And that's how I sit with it. Like, for people who are excited about it, and there are people who are excited about it, they'll get it, right? And for people who are not excited about it, maybe they'll get it in the future. Maybe they'll never get it. In either case, it's fine. Like, Sister Sci-Fi is not for them. There's something else that's for them. And I will focus on the people who it's for.
Yeah, and not go into that teaching mode and the emotional labor.
And I'm like, and I think that's the double tap. Like, there are people who are out there doing that work, and I think it's beautiful, and that's just not work I want to do. Right.
Yeah, that's valid. All right. I think, we're right about there. Any last questions or any last comments?
Thank y'all for being here.
What panel are you looking forward to, or do you have any more today? Oh, sorry, that was
right. I was like, my brain was so blank, and I was like, I feel like I do. No, I think this is my last panel for today. There's so many good panels. There's so many good panels. So I really enjoyed participating on the horror panel. So that was fun this morning. I feel like there's like I need to sit with. Oh, there's a Utopias panel at 3.
Okay.
So I'm hoping to be able to, which is like now. Um, Me and Timeless, like. I was telling somebody, oh yeah, I could be there at noon, and then I looked at my schedule. I was like, you have a whole thing at noon. Like, what was I thinking? Um, yeah, I'm excited to connect with the attendees. Like, I think I've been like running the whole time. Um, I'm doing Mother Maiden.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
And the other one.
yeah.
I love that title.
It's a great title, and I think that's like not just women, but like older women in horror. So that should be a good conversation. So I'm really excited that with Norwescon, it has been a place where I could bring all parts of my identity, and that feels really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you
that's
so much
awesome.
for facilitating this.
Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate it.